Hey there, thanks for joining me on this episode of Tropical Weather Impact. I'm meteorologist Pete Malone. It's Friday, September the 5th, heading into a weekend here where there are no big tropical threats to the United States, but a couple areas we are going to monitor here over the next few days and over the next maybe couple of weeks. The main one that's got everyone's attention is Invest 91. Just wanted to start off the top here showing how far away it is. It's way out in the Atlantic, still just monitoring it, and the Hurricane Center giving that a high chance. A couple areas closer to home that we're also monitoring is this old frontal boundary that's got some low pressure trying to develop off of it. You could see this morning that there is nothing organized, there's nothing that the Hurricane Center is highlighting, but we are seeing some showers and storms out here in the eastern Gulf and some showers and storms along that boundary from the Bahamas up into the Atlantic. Now we are seeing some model guidance that suggests low pressure is trying to form in here. You can see there's not any organized showers or thunderstorms with it right now, but that could be a little area of spin trying to form right off the west coast of Florida. Now what does that mean for the Gulf region? Well, it doesn't mean really anything for the New Orleans area or the northern Gulf. We're going to be mostly dry through the weekend with another front coming in Sunday. Now what it means for Florida is there will be increased rain, especially in South Florida and over towards the Bahamas. Look at all these showers and storms. I'll step out of the way so you can see more of those showers there. And notice you get some broad low pressure trying to form there in this general area just thanks to those showers and storms, but nothing really organizing into anything at all. And so that's going to be what we're watching here off the Gulf and off the East Coast too, that old frontal boundary producing persistent showers and storms. Meanwhile, Sunday afternoon, look at this, cool front blast to the south, and that brings in some low humidity along the northern Gulf into early next week. All right, here's what we're tracking with Invest 91. The Hurricane Center is giving this a high chance of development, 60% in the next 48 hours to 70% in the next 90% in the next 7 days as it slowly drifts off to the west. Now, Invest 91 has some obstacles ahead of it, and while they're giving it a high chance of development, not completely sold, we are going to see development with this. Just looking at it this morning, very anemic, it's struggling. It doesn't have a lot of showers and storms with it. We've got some stability issues and we've got some dry air. I put in the Saharan dust here because we do have a fairly substantial plume of Saharan dust that is rolling off the continent of Africa. You can see this large plume there, that's Invest 91. Now that dry air is going to be pushing out along with this tropical wave, and this could be a limiting factor on this thing actually organizing. And so while our chances of development are quite high right now, these numbers still could be adjusted. I honestly wouldn't be shocked maybe if these numbers have to be adjusted down. We're still monitoring these trends, and we're just in this wait and watch game. Now everyone wants to know, is this ever going to be a threat to the United States? We don't have a clue, and I could show you model run after model run after model run, but the biggest problem right now with those are we don't have a developed system, and if we don't know what it's going to do in the next 2 or 3 days, we certainly don't know what it's going to do in 7 days, 10 days, or even 14 days. So we don't have a clue on really what the final destination of Invest 91 will end up being. But what we see in the near term is that it is struggling. It's trying to organize, but dry air is really working on this thing as of right now. Now, if we do get a named storm out of this, let's talk about potential impacts to land areas next week. This is our tropical models. Different models run, and you can see they all show it very slowly drifting off to the west here. Only a couple of these models develop it into a named storm, but if there is a named storm, we've got it near the islands. There's Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, the Lesser Antilles here by next Wednesday into Thursday. So this is about 5 to 6 days from now, we could have that potential for a developing storm somewhere near the islands, if there is actually a storm there. But again, there are some obstacles ahead of this. And then as we go out in time, again, if we have a storm down here, it starts to turn maybe to the north as we go through Saturday. Now we're getting into that time of year where steering currents get weird, and by weird, they change frequently, they change often, and there can be some big changes. If you've ever looked at some hurricane tracks in the month of September, you sometimes have some weird tracks. Betsy back in the 1960s is a great example of steering currents being weird in September. Betsy was going to the north here, got off the east coast, and here in the Gulf region, you see a storm out here, you're thinking, well, it's going to continue to go out to sea. It ain't a problem. Not so fast. Betsy did an infamous loop, went across Florida, and then came up and made landfall in southeast Louisiana is one of the strongest hurricanes on record down here. And so you've got to watch these things closely, because just because something's turning north doesn't mean it's always going to keep going north. If steering currents change, storm slows down, stalls, and you get a whole new path. And so I just use that as an example of be cautious when you're looking at a 14-day model run showing it going out to sea. A lot more goes into meteorology than just looking at model runs, okay? And I know they're available online, but just because a model run shows this or that, you still watch these things. And I'm not using that as an example of that's what I think is going to happen. It's just an example of how unpredictable things get, especially after 7 days. Let's talk about what our big models are showing. The GFS is in red, the European model is in green. They show absolutely opposite things right now. In fact, the GFS has this thing coming up to a hurricane. The European model doesn't even have a storm. It completely dissipates. And so this is what we're going to be watching right now, and why models aren't super reliable, because they're struggling to determine, does this actually form? I think the reason they're struggling a lot with it right now has to do with its size. It's a tiny little system trying to come together, which means it's extremely susceptible to the dry air and the wind shear. And there are going to be some of those two things. Now, if Invest 91 can actually create a vortex and cut itself off from the dry air, create a little pocket of moisture, if it being so small, it can ramp up fairly quickly. And so that's what the GFS model is doing. It's creating a storm that creates a pocket of moisture and it ramps up. The European model never allows that vortex to develop, and it gets just shredded and pulled apart by the dry air and the wind shear. And so that's why you've got two vastly different solutions here. The GFS model, by September 14th, that is a week and 2 days away, so we're not literally talking 10 days. The GFS has a storm in the southern part of the Atlantic, just north of the Caribbean. The European model has the remnants of a tropical wave just meandering out here near the islands. And so it's something we'll just need to check back in next weekend. We'll have an idea on if there's actually a storm there or not. And so we're just in this wait and watch game here in the United States. Of course, the islands are going to be watching this much, much closer over the next 5 days, as they could have a system coming on in. A keyword could. We aren't quite sure because of that dry air. Now, what I'm showing you here is the European model. You can see there's your tropical wave, little spin in the atmosphere and that white little blob. But notice you've got this dry air on the north side. You've got this new plume of dry air coming in on the south side. And it's moving slowly, but there is some wind shear in the mid-levels of the atmosphere. And so maybe that wind shear and that dry air, look at this. You can see there kind of stretching the vortex, and that dry air just dominates in this model run. And so that is a scenario. That's one of the things that I'm not sold. We guaranteed to have a named storm out of this by the end of this weekend and early next week. Even though the Hurricane Center says a high chance, model guidance has been fluctuating. I caution you there. So let's talk about the steering currents. If this is ever something we have to worry about in the U.S., when would it be? 2 weeks from now, maybe a little less than 2 weeks from now. So why could it ever be a problem for the U.S.? Why wouldn't it just go out to sea? Well, we watch our ridges of high pressure. That's in the oranges. This is what's steering it right now. And then we also watch our big troughs of low pressure. Troughs of low pressure equate to a cold front this time of year. And so as we go out in motion here, let's fast forward into the weekend. And you can see there, generally slowly traveling around the ridge of high pressure. If there's a storm, it's still under that ridge by next Tuesday. What's happening over the U.S.? Well, we've got mainly a trough digging down over the East Coast, which keeps the edge of this ridge on the weaker side as we head into next week. That's not a bad thing. That could allow, if there's a system down there, to start to gain latitude. Let's go into a week from now, September 11th here. September 11th and September the 12th. What's happening? The ridge is still weakening. That's good. If we have a system down here, it's feeling this trough of low pressure. Thing is, this system isn't moving very quickly. And it's all about timing of the ridge. It's about timing of the trough. And more importantly, timing of the system. Where is it at, and is it feeling the effects of these steering currents? So it's going to be, if there's something down here, slowly trying to turn north. Now, you got to get the thing turned and turn fast enough before it gets left behind. Because what will happen is maybe next week, this trough starts to lift out. And when that trough starts to lift out, what happens? Well, the extension of the ridge tries to build back in. Now, again, it's all about timing and if there even is a storm down here. You've watched a couple model runs recently, the GFS specifically, and it has showed a hurricane coming at the U.S. in 2 weeks. Now, we don't have a clue if that's really going to happen, but the reason that model is showing it is because the storm comes in a little later and slower. The trough backs away and this ridge builds back in, and that's why you've got a storm doing this. Good Lord. There was a big bang just now. You've got a ridge, the ridge weakening and then the ridge strengthening again, which is why you have the storm coming back in that 2-week model run. And so we don't know if that's going to happen. If we can time it out just right, if something's down there, it could go out to sea. All that to say, we don't know really what it's going to do at the end of the day that far out. We're just in this wait and watch game. We just have to sit back, be patient, and just not stress about it because it's so far out. That's where we stand with Invest 91 right now as it slowly tries to organize, not looking terribly healthy, but there is still that chance that maybe we get a named storm out of this in the coming days and heading into next week. The island's watching this a lot closer. Hope everyone has a great weekend, not stressing about the tropics here. We're getting ready for that nice cool front to come in by the end of the weekend here along the Gulf. And that's all we got in our forecast for now. I hope everyone has a great weekend. We'll see you right back here on Monday with the latest.